Hi, this is Nina Bawal, and welcome to the third in the series of Internet Independent webinar. Today, we're going to look at the topic of digital media literacy to give you the foundation to understand why it's important, why we've really hit on it as one of the core topics, and what children need to know and what we need to define, and how it looks like in our children's real life and online spaces. So the best thing to do, first of all, is start where I love to start, which is in our children's world. When we start talking about digital media literacy, we need children to understand what we're talking about is not the newspaper or the news channel that we traditionally talk about when we talk about how we receive or get our news, but to look at how they navigate their apps and what they learn from the apps they are on. So again, get our children to write down the apps that they use and which ones they find out information and facts from. It'd be very interesting where children believe or students believe they are getting facts from and why they believe it to be true. We now know that 80% of news that our children actually and students listen to come from influencers online rather than what me and you would traditionally call an authentic source. The issue with the fact that this is true is a lot of what they see and their literacy that they get online is fake news. Now, what is fake news? We can pull down fake news into clearly different areas. It's more complex than saying to a student, it's things online that aren't true, and we should be able to navigate that. And me and you have fallen for fake news before. It has become incredibly complicated to dissect and understand if news is fake or not, for many reasons. One, it can be fueled by propaganda in terms of what one thought or think tank wants you to think, be it the West, be it the East, be it a community. There is often an agenda to the news that is being put online, and there can be made to feel very, very real through its narrative and through the performance or the virality of the post. The other thing to look at is disinformation and misinformation, and I'm going to explore those two terms a bit more widely. We need our children and we ourselves to understand that fake news comes in two clear defined forms. One is misinformation and one is disinformation. Let me define those two. Disinformation is when somebody goes out of their way to create fake news, to come up with something with the motivation of causing havoc or mayhem. A case in example that you can talk about in a school is somebody posts something about another student that is not true to cause havoc, to cause toxicity, or to make that person feel vulnerable. That information is made to cause anguish. That is disinformation. Now, misinformation is if you receive that tweet or that Instagram post and you believe it to be true, so you share it amongst your students or friends and they share it onwards. It's become viral. Viral does not mean it's true. It means that it has started to spread like wildfire. This is misinformation. And this is where a lot of us get caught up. We hear something from someone we trust or some source that we believe is indeed likely to be factual, but it tends not to be or may not be. The amount of times we hear students say, oh, I Googled it or I saw it on ChatGPT, it hasn't come from an original source. More than ever today, when we hear information, we need to check how we decipher if something is a good or a bad source. Now, with kids, as we said, YouTube influencers, TikTok influencers take up a massive mind share of how they consume or receive knowledge. We can't change that. That's not something that we have the power to do, but we can get students to think through critically. Okay, what's the motivation behind my influencer telling me this? For example, if we have someone on TikTok who's telling us that they have discovered the best mascara in the world and they want everyone to know about it, they're a beauty influencer, they are just out to do good. First of all, can we look at the post? Is it a paid partnership? What's the motivation behind the influencer saying that this mascara is the best? Maybe they truly believe it. Or maybe it is part of a campaign. Is there a hashtag that is attached to it? And is there a virality of other influencers on that hashtag? Maybe that is a piece of PR propaganda that's pushing that particular mascara. This is an easy way to emulate something that would happen in a child's world for them to truly understand it. Again, if you have somebody who is spreading toxic information about something like vaccinations, claiming that it's not factual that they work, then go to the source and say, let's look at this source. Let's see where they've got their information from. Can we go down and look at what they're saying and who else is saying it? And if we believe this source, it's best to establish as a school, as an educator, and as a parent, what sources you trust as a family. For me, you may have discovered from my voice, I'm from the UK, so we tend to go to things that I've grown up with, like the BBC. You may go for something that your country reflects as something as an authentic source. Children should be aware of what value system and what authentic source they should be checking. And then we should be aware that when we are receiving information, instead of saying, that sounds fake to me, say, oh, okay, let's check and see if we can source this to an authentic source. So every piece of fake news may be factual, may not be factual, has to be fact checked. And it's best in an educational environment to get into the habit of doing that. And a clear discussion of how we decide who we trust and who we don't trust. There's a complexity to news online. Often with photos and with AI, we can manipulate things to look like it's real. So it's not like we can see and hear it and therefore it's true. We now have to see, hear, and go back and source it. So what do we ask our children to do before they move forward? First of all, check the URL. If they're getting a piece of information when they've just Googled it and they truly think it's true, to check who wrote it. Is it somebody who's an authentic journalist, an expert in the field, or is it a blog which may have been copied and pasted just to get you to click on it? Is it clickbait? Is there some sort of motivation for you to come onto this platform that is not just for you, but for them? Is there a benefit to them? Can we verify it when we've heard something and it sounds really crazy? And trust me, there's a lot of crazy things out there. Can we verify the source? Okay, if one news establishment is saying it and a second and someone an expert in the field, I can say it to be true, even if it's crazy. We need to be able to go on and see what tools can support us. Who's saying it? Back to what I had just said about the motivation behind the conversation. Can we get children to really look at motivations of information? Is there a motivation that doesn't have information attached to it? One of the things I love to do with kids is to take one piece of news, which is current affairs, maybe of that week, and have a look at a right-wing paper and a left-wing paper and how they've reported it. How have they reported the facts? What language have they used? Have they inflamed a certain situation? Have they misinterpreted it or interpreted it to suit their audience? Going into this really makes people reflect on the inconsistencies or why somebody has gone through that. One of the best tools out there right now with so many different images flying around the internet is Google reverse image search. By doing an image search, you can see if something is being manipulated, if it's shown in a different place, capacity. We've seen this with situations where somebody on Twitter has reported a volcano or a tsunami that is about to come, and you do a reverse image search and you'll find it's an old picture in a different country that has nothing to do with what they're saying. So it's an incredibly useful tool to show kids and students they can use, as is snops.com. I'm not sure if I've said that correctly, but this is great. You can go there and it's a fact-checking tool where it will verify if a piece of news is real or not. The other thing it can do is break down a piece of news. Some things start from a thread of truth, and you'll find the first part of the article was true, and then it's gone off on its own tangent when somebody's motivation or manipulation has come into it. And really to trust your instincts. Sometimes instinctively we know that something could have been created to cause havoc or harm or the virality. If you do think that there's something wrong with it, don't forward it on. What we need to do is not be part of the misinformation piece and forward things on without thinking about things before we do it. And your instinct can often stop you from doing that. With the rise of AI, there is a lot of manipulation of content, as I was talking about, in terms of the visual world, and we lack control in being able to support or help this. So we have to be aware that AI is going to manipulate a lot of images and videos, and we need to already start thinking critically through what those images are, in what context are they put out there. Are they pushing a agenda? Is there some bias towards it in terms of who wrote it, who shared it, and logically think through why it has been curated? The images that are coming out look so good to be true that you can't do the old thing of looking at the blur line or looking at the editation. So now we have to look through why and how it's been done and for what motivation. So these are some of the things that we should look at when we're talking about digital media literacy. Unfortunately, our children are navigating very complex times when it comes to misinformation and disinformation. So this is not just a tool that we need to put into our cyber and our digital lessons, but into all lessons, especially when creating essays or authentic pieces of work, that we don't just go out there and grab things that look visually and sound visually authentic, but really know how to get to a point where a source can be verified. Thank you very much for being part of this module. We will be moving on to our next webinar series, and hopefully we will see you there.